Alright guys, how's it going? I am the Crown Clown, and today we are back at it again with What If Deku Was Cobra Part 2. I'm absolutely astonished by how quickly the views grew on that video, so I read every single comment, and I know you guys are wanting more. So without delay, I am going to give you exactly what you asked for. And I have a new thumbnail on this one. I want you guys to tell me which one you liked more, either this one or the old one, and whichever one you guys decide will be the one I put going forward. But Deku, he looks exactly like the two people on there, like exactly to the T. So that's how Deku's looking with the red hair and that, muscle build that's not really bulky, but kind of like a slim cut look. That's Deku. But anyways, let's go at it with a little recap real quick. So, where we last left off, Deku was, you know, just got finished with completing the, entrance exam, and he basically told Uraraka that, all she did was just get in his way. That, she's just a sideliner. And, Redestro adopted Deku, and Deku changed his name from Izuku Midoriya to Cobra Yotsubashi. That is his new name. And Bakugo doesn't recognize Deku. And Deku, he recognizes Bakugo because he just had to think of happier times while he was basically a slave in the Heavens Research Lab. And he told Redestro everything that happened to him. Like every little detail and how he escaped, what his powers are. So Redestro knows everything. And Deku's infiltrating UA as a spy. And everyone knows, like, don't look at Deku wrong because he's just got a short fuse and he'll snap real quick. Ida figured that out, and even Ida's not wanting to go up there and try to criticize Deku. Like, he's got a big, dangerous vibe going on. But, there is some time before class starts, of course, because you have that waiting period for the, acceptance letters to go out and reviewing everybody's deal. So, during that time, Deku, he's actually just walking around. And, he's spending time with a snake, which, you guys did vote on the name for the snake, and the winner is Kubelios, because that had the most individual people repeats for that one. So Kubelios is the winner, and that shall be the snake's name moving forward, which is ironically the same name as, Cobra's snake and fairy tale. So I guess you guys just kind of wanted to keep it canon. So yeah, I can respect that. But anyway, so Deku, his free time is spent with Kubelios, which they just hang out in the room. But, Redestro tells him that, he needs to get out more. And Deku's like, alright, fine. And he's just walking around outside. He's not really doing much. He can't bring Kubelios because, people freak out and call the cops on him. And he's not wanting to handle with all that crap. But, he happens to be walking by a music store one day, and this tune starts, catching his attention. It's rather pleasing to his ears. For the first time in a long time, he's actually found something that didn't annoy him completely. So he stops by walking for a minute, and he just, stands there listening. He decides to go into the store to see who's making that noise, and, he finds a young woman who's about his age. She has, black hair, punk rock outfit, and, Deku, he's in a suit right now. He's like in a, have his sleeves rolled up. He has a button-up vest going on, slacks, and dress shoes. So not your typical, person that should walk right into a music store. And, she sees Deku and she immediately stops playing and she's like, oh, are you a customer? And Deku's like, Kinda. I was just wanting to know who was making that music out in here, and she's like, "Oh, that was me. Was it bothering you? Was it too loud?" And Deku says, "Well, my hearing's a bit different from people, so don't worry. I actually rather liked it. It's relaxing." And you know, yes, what's your name? And she says, "Oh, my name is Jiro." And she asks what his name is. He says, "The name's Cobra." And she's like, "Cobra? That for real?" And Deku, shows her his ID and it says Cobra and on it. And she's just like, "Okay, so that's your actual name." And Deku says, "Yeah, it's rather unusual, but it fits my powers perfectly." And she's like, "Oh, what's your power?" And Deku says, "Well, you'll see." And she's like, "I'll see." And he's like, "Well, if you go to UA, I mean, we're about the same age, am I wrong?" And she says, "No, we're about the same age." And he asks her, where's she going to high school? She says she applied for UA. And Deku says, "See, I already knew." And she's just like, "But there's no guarantee I'll get in." And Deku says, "Please, with your abilities, I'm pretty sure you could get in." And Jiro's like, "Huh? How do you know mine?" And Deku says, "I'm good at analyzing people. Just from, telling that the way your earlobes are, they can jack into something. And I'm seeing that, you are good with sound, so that gives me the impression you have a sound based quirk." And she's just like, "Wow, you actually deduced my quirk." "Yeah." And he's like, "It's kind of a gift. I've just been raised really smart. My dad, he's spared no expense to make sure I'm the best at everything." And she says, "Oh, everything. So you could play an instrument better than I could?" And Deku says, "Oh no, I'm not musically inclined. When I say everything, I mean everything business related." And she's like, "Oh, who was your dad?" And he says, "Well, my last name is Yotsubashi." And that clicks with her immediately. Because, like I said, Redestro is known far and wide as, a prestigious man and, businessman at top of that. And she's like, "Oh crap, you're the guy everyone's talking about." And he's like, "What do you mean everyone's talking about?" She shows him the video on her phone, and it's literally of Deku out there taking out the zero pointer with a single attack and just yelling at them, saying that they're just getting in his way. And, Deku says, "Well, that's taken out of context." And she's like, "Oh, so what's the right context?" And Deku says, "Well, I told her to get out of my way because she was trapped underneath the rubble. I removed the rubble. I told her to get to safety and let me handle it. She stayed right there in the way. She was in the danger zone of being poisoned." And, you know, Jiro, she's understanding his, aggression in that scene then, and he's just like, "See, I'm not a bad guy. I just have a temper, that's all. Get it from my dad, honest." And, Jiro says, "Okay, yeah, I can understand that." And that's when, Jiro's dad, who's the shop owner, yells out to her and says, "Hey, Jiro, did you take the, package down to the Midoriya's?" And Deku hears that and he kind of flinches. And she's like, "Hey, you okay?" He says, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she says, "No, not yet, Dad. I'll be getting right on it." And, she goes over there, gets the package, which is, musical instruments that, Inko ordered because ever since they, gave up Deku, they've been living the high life. Like, Hiyashi, when he heard the 900 billion price tag for Deku, in his mind, Deku's never been his son at that point. And even though Inko did feel guilty at first, she's pretty happy with her decision because they think Deku, got the royal treatment and all that. Little did they know they signed him up for hell. And Deku, like I said, he hates Inko and Hisashi. He hates them both with a passion. So, Yeah. He says, hey, you mind if I go with you? Drop that off? We could talk a little bit more. And Jiro says, well, there's no rule against you going the same way as me, so why not? And Deku says, awesome. So they walk out and they start walking towards the Midoriya household. And on the way, Deku, he's feeling this anger, something that he's only felt towards one other person in his entire life, just bubbling up inside. And, you know, he's trying to get it under control because he knows if he doesn't, poisons about this just go everywhere. And he's not wanting to poison anybody unintentionally. Redestro would have his head on a platter. So he's keeping his cool best he can. So they, start talking. Jiro initiates the conversation. She's like, so, what made you want to come with me? And Deku says, oh, I find you interesting. And, you're quite beautiful to boot. So, what's not to like? Besides, you don't hurt my ears. And, Jiro's face turns a little bit red. And, she asks, so, what's the deal with your ears? And Deku says, well, my ears are super sensitive. It's so finely attuned, I can hear people's thoughts. And it's not something I really like to do all too well. And she's just like, oh, so you can't turn it off? And Degus is afraid not. It's kind of a permanent deal, but it does come in handy sometimes. It allows me to figure out when people are lying and when they're telling the truth. Also, if they're talking crap about me or thinking shit about me. And Jiro's just like, so, can you read my mind? As she stops talking for a minute, and Deku, he pauses for a second, and he says, no, I have never once looked at your butt. And she's just like, holy crap, you can actually hear my thoughts. And Deku says, why would that be your thought in the first place? And, Jiro's just like, I don't know. And Deku says, you're a weird one, aren't you? Jiro just smiles at him and says, yeah, I'm pretty weird. And, they start walking off. And they get there to the Midoriya household. Jiro, buzzes at the gate. And Deku sees that his parents have upgraded their house. He remembers when they were still living in that little neighborhood. But now they're living in a, pretty big house with a full-bodied gate around it. And, Jiro and Deku, they start entering. And, Jiro hands over the package to Inko. And Inko looks at Deku and she's like, you look kind of familiar. Have I seen you around before? And Deku says, I'm afraid not. And she's like, well, what's your name? And he says, my name, it's Cobra Yoshibashi. And she's like, oh, you're him, the guy everyone's talking about. And Deku's like, okay, did that video go viral of me or something? And she's like, no. You're Destro's son, correct? And, Deku's just like, yeah, I'm his son. And, he's actually kind of concerned that someone just called him Destro. And, luckily, Jiro didn't pick up on that because she's being, kind of harassed by one of the yards keepers for walking on the grass. So, yeah, Deku doesn't have to kill her. But Inko kind of knows a little bit too much. And, Hisashi comes out, Deku sees him, and he starts going mad. And, Jiro says, hey, Cobra, I'm gonna head on back. You gonna come with me? And he says, no, you go on ahead. I have a little bit of business to take care of here. And she says, okay. Deku tells her, I'll meet you back at the shop. Promise. What time you guys close? She says, we don't close till 8. And Deku says, yeah, I'll definitely see you there then. Shouldn't take me long. And so she leaves, and Deku's face turns to one of absolute anger. And Hisashi sees that. He's just like, "Who are you?" And, Inko says, "Oh, this is Cobra Yoshibashi, Destro's son." And Deku says, "How do you know him by Destro?" And she's like, well, everyone of the Liberation Army knows him as Destro, right? Deku says, "Don't give me that. I know you're not part of the Liberation." And she's like, "How would you?" He says, "Because I'm part of them." And he starts flaring up. His poison starts seeping off. And they notice that their hired help is starting to fall out. And they realize he's letting off poison, but he's not directing it at them for some odd reason. And he says, "However, I should probably tell you my first name." And they're just like, "Your first name?" He says, "Yeah, Cobra's not the name I was given at birth. And I'm not Redestro's, you know, actual blood son." And they start getting very concerned. And he starts rattling off the past. He says, "Once upon a time, you guys had a son about 5 years old. Green hair, wanted to be a hero, sure. Then, found out he was quirkless. Big shame there. Poor kid never knew what was going to happen to him because of that. Talk about winning the lottery ticket to hell." Anyways, and Hiyashi's like, "How do you know all this?" And Deku just grabs him by the mouth and tells him to shut up. He's talking. And slams him to the ground. Inko's terrified at this point. And, Deku's getting angrier and angrier. And he says, then you guys met with some government agent, Special Agent Arasaka. And boy, did he offer you guys a golden ticket, didn't he? Something you could live the next 10 years of your lives comfortably on. And, Inko pretty much gets it. And Hisashi's not wanting to. He knows where this is going, but he doesn't want to. And Deku says, "But boy, did you guys do the wrong thing there. You guys probably thought you were doing a noble deed, keeping your son away, making sure you guys were nice and rich. And then, sell your son off to be a slave. Treat him like he's a piece of property. Subhuman. He has a price tag associated with him." And they're just like, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Izuku Midoriya, your long-lost son, come back to bite you in the ass." And they're just like, "But why?" And he says, "Like I said, you sold me into slavery." And there's like, "What? No, we let them," he says, "you let them experiment on me. They cut my flesh, branded me with this," as he rips open his shirt, revealing the dragon brand that was put onto his chest. And they look horrified. They see all the scars on them. He says, "I was beaten, battered, and thrown in a little tiny room. My best friend was a snake. And even they tried to take that away from me. The one doctor there that was nice to me was fired for being nice to me. They treated me subhuman. I wasn't even part of their, okay, let's just, keep him alive or treat him well or anything. Oh, they gave me an education, but it wasn't a peaceful one. Every time I didn't understand something, they'd punch me in the face. It got so bad that one year they started breaking my bones every time I didn't answer a question correctly. And then whenever I failed to show results, they'd beat me even more." And they're horrified, and they realize what they've done. And they start pleading with him and saying, "We're so sorry. We're so sorry." Deku just grabs them by their faces and lets the poison go into their body. And he says, "No, you're not. But soon, soon you will be." He's not going to kill them. No. He hasn't killed anybody there. But the poison that's going into them, they're going to feel it. It's non-lethal, but boy, is it going to hurt. Their bodies go numb and they lay there, shaking in pain, not even able to scream or moan a single letter, let alone a word. And Deku walks off and he says, "Do yourself a favor. Forget everything here, or I'll have to come back and finish the job." And they're terrified, but with that intense pain going through them, they actually black out and don't recall anything. Not even Deku's visit. They only remember meeting Cobra and Jiro. That's it. Everything else after that's a blank. Not even any of the staff remember that because Deku used the same poison on them. But, he feels a little bit satisfied now, knowing that he caused his parents some intense pain and something that's a little bit of a fraction of what he felt. And, he actually enjoyed it. He goes back to the music shop where Jiro's at, and, at this time it's like 6. So he stops on by, and Jiro says, "Oh, hey, what took you so long?" And Deku says, "They actually went on a long time about my dad and, wanting to know my goals and all that. I shouldn't have gone. Turned out to be a drag." And she's like, "Yeah, I bet. Sorry." And Deku says, "Oh, no, it's my fault. I insisted on going with you." And he says, "But hey, whenever you get off, how would you like to go grab something to eat?" And Jiro's just like, "I don't know." And her mom says, "Jiro, you can go out with your friend now if you want." And Jiro's like, "But the shop," and her mom says, "Jiro, sweetie, it's 2 hours till closing. Nothing's gonna happen. Feel free to go. Have fun." So, she goes out with Deku to eat. And, they're just talking a bit more. Deku, he's really getting to know her musical talents and all that. And, he's actually likes listening to her voice. It's very soothing to him. When he's around her, he notices he doesn't feel that rage. And that just makes him like being around her. But little does he know, Redestro's keeping tabs on him. Everything he's done today, Redestro knows. And, he's actually, not gonna say nothing to Deku about it. He's just gonna ask him about his day, and if he doesn't tell him, then, oh well. He has plenty more ways of getting him to tell him eventually. And, after Deku left, someone went in and finished the job. Meaning, Deku's parents, Inko and Hisashi, they're gone. They're dead. Redestro had them silenced. And, it's on the news, and, it says, "Assassin killing Midoriya's." And, they say, "No survivors were found, but trace elements of poison and ice were at the scene of the crime. Authorities are investigating." And Deku's just like, "What? My poison? It wasn't even strong enough to kill them. What happened here?" And, next thing, breaking news, authorities find perpetrator who has ice quirk and poison on body. And, suspect is deceased after appearing to have taken his own life by his own poison. And Deku's just like, that's too much of a coincidence. There's only one person I know that could pull off something like that. Dad. And, Jiro's just like, "But we were just there." And, her mom calls her and she's like, "Sweetie, did you see anything about the Midoriyas?" And, she's just like, "No, nothing. I promise." And Deku, he even speaks on the phone to her and, says that, she left before him and even he didn't see anything like that after the fact. And Deku, what's really getting on his nerves is that he didn't hear it. He didn't hear it at all. So he's actually pretty pissed off about this. But, not for the reasons that Jiro thinks he's mad. Deku's just mad that Redestro didn't tell him that he had a tail following him. And that's what's really getting under Deku's skin right now. And, they decide to go home early. And, you know, on their way home, they actually run into a few more people. They actually run into Ida, who, sees Deku walking with Momo, and actually sees him smiling and laughing a little bit. And he actually, walks up to him, and, Ida, he's with his brother. So, Ida says, "Oh, hey, you're from the entrance exam, right?" And, Deku looks at Ida and says, "Oh, yeah, you were there too, I suppose." And, you know, Deku's just like, "So, what do you want?" And he's just like, "Well, I came to actually formally introduce myself." And Deku's just like, "Oh, yeah, you never did tell me your name." And Ida says, "Yes, because you never gave me the chance." Deku just tells him right to his face, "Sorry, but I didn't really much care." And Ida is actually just like, the nerve of this guy. But he knows better than to piss him off. Especially, from the way he carries himself. And Ida's brother is actually wary of Deku a lot more than Ida is. Because in Genium, he's a hero. He knows danger when he sees it. And all he sees from Deku is death. And he tells Ida, "Hey, we gotta go. Sorry to cut the introduction short. I know he was about to introduce himself, but this is my little brother, Tenya Ida. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr." And Ida says, "His name is Cobra. Cobra Yotsubashi." And Ingenium hears that name, and he's just like, "Okay, yeah, we really gotta be going, sorry." And he drags Ida off somewhere. And Jiro's thinking, how strange. Deku, he cocks his head a little bit, and he's like, "Yeah, how strange." And Ida, he's just like, "Brother, what's wrong?" And he sees his brother is sweating intensely. And he tells Ida, "That boy, I saw death on him." And Ida's like, "What, you mean he's gonna die soon?" And he says, "No, he causes death. He's a killer. I know the type. I saw it in his eyes. He's killed before." And Ida's like, "Are you sure?" And his brother tells him, "Absolutely. He's dangerous, Ida. Keep your distance. Don't associate with him. Please." And Ida tells him, "Very well. I won't associate with him." And so, Deku actually ends up getting home after he walks Jiro home. And he acts like he's going, but he's keeping a firm ear out on anything. And sure enough, he hears the grainest of sounds, a pebble on the sidewalk rolling. He turns back and he actually spots his follower, a person dressed in all black. They freak out and they try to run away. Deku catches them, slams them into the alleyway, and holds them by the neck and says, "Who are you and why are you following me? And were you the ones that killed the Midoriyas? And what were you about to do to Jiro? You tell me now, or you die. And the assailant says, It's been a while, hasn't it, Midoriya? And he recognizes that voice, and he says, Lisa? Lisa Amane? And she says, In the flesh. Could you set me down now? And he sets her down, and she says, Look at you, all grown up. And he says, Yeah, except the name's not Midoriya, it's Cobra. And she says, Oh, I'm well aware of the name you're going by these days. Tell me, that isn't your legal name now, is it? Deku, it is. It's my legal name. And she's like, Boy, you're one for right on the nose, aren't you? Deku says, You're about to find out how on the nose. She says, Hold on a minute. I didn't kill the Midoriyas. I am keeping tabs on you, sure. Actually, I'm the one that killed their killer. And he says, What do you mean? And she tells him, Well, I planted some poison on him and actually injected him with a poison dart, removed the dart, and it looks like he overdosed on his own poison. And Deku says, Why are you covering up for me? And she tells him, It's about your father, Redestro. There's some things that you should know about him. And Deku says he's listening. And she tells him, Your dad's having you tracked. He's not confident in your abilities. He doesn't trust you. And Deku says, And you know this how? Because she was almost killed by him. And Deku actually steps back, and she's not lying. He's hearing this, and he's like, What do you mean? You better give me some straight answers now, or you're not going to like what happens. And she says, Calm down, calm down. I'm not here to hurt you. And he says, Oh, I'm well aware. You couldn't hurt me even if you tried. And she says, Look, he's trying to kill everyone that you have had contact with in the past and erase all forms of Izuku Midoriya. And that's a bad thing. Why? I'd be happy if my past as Izuku Midoriya was erased completely. And, she says, Look, I can understand why you're so angry, but listen, just work with me here, please. Or did you forget? I'm the only one that showed you any type of kindness. And Deku says, Then why'd you leave? And she's like, What do you mean? I got terminated, remember? And Deku, he says, Don't you pull that shit with me. I read the files before I left. And she says, Oh, so you know. Deku says, Yeah, I know. So tell me, who's the other Dragon Slayer? And she says, That I can't tell you. And he says, Then at least tell me what's their attribute. And she says, The other Dragon Slayer's attribute is iron. They're the Iron Dragon Slayer. And Deku says, So, you had another lacrima? And she says, No. This one didn't come from a lacrima. And he's like, What do you mean? And she tells him, He learned this one the old-fashioned way, through the ancient text. And Deku says, So it's a he. Oh well, iron can't protect against my poison. And she says, You underestimating him. is what's going to get you killed. And actually, Redestro has him on his payroll. And Deku's eyes go wide and anger fills. And he's like, what do you mean? And, she says, look, the only way your lacrima can be extracted is if you die. Okay? It won't be taken out by any other way. It's a part of you now. It's like an internal organ. If you take it out or get it removed, it'll kill you. But the way I made that lacrima, it's basically disintegrated and all of it merged with your organs. So technically, you no longer have a lacrima in you. Your organs are what are producing your poison. And there's a lot about dragon slayers you don't know yet. And Deku's like, oh, what about? And she asks, have you ever tried eating poison? And Deku's like, what, you trying to get me killed? And she's like, no. It would actually make you stronger. Deku's like, what? And she says, dragon slayers are able to eat any type as long as it's their element. Magic or not, they could eat it. And Deku says, wait a minute. So me eating poison would actually increase my strength. She says, in a way. He says, in a way. She says, if you were low on power and you ingested poison, it would bring you back up to full strength. And Deku says, will any type of poison do? She says, any type except your own. And Deku says, okay. So, what's next? She says, so you're willing to work with me? Deku tells her, just as long as it takes to kill that other dragon slayer. And he asks, wait a minute, why do you want that other dragon slayer dead so bad? And she says, well, because he killed my son. And Deku says, then tell me his name. Right here, right now. What is his name? And she just looks at him and says, I can't tell you yet. You're not strong enough. Just know, he'll go to UA. He's already been accepted. Same as you. And Deku's like, what do you mean I'm accepted? How do you know that? And she says, because I'm the doctor at UA. And Deku's like, get out. I thought it was Recovery Girl. And she says, well, technically, yes. But I'm her nurse, doctor, or assistant doctor. So, technically, you have two. And he's just like, okay. Doesn't explain how you know. She says, I went snooping through their acceptance letters. Apparently that girl Jiro is going to be there too. And Deku looks at her and says, by the way, what were you going to do to Jiro? And she says, actually nothing. And Deku says, I don't buy it. And he says, besides, you just lied. So he grabs her by the throat and says, tell me what you were planning to do. And she says, I was just going to knock her out and interrogate her, see what she knew about you. And Deku says, and if she knew something that you didn't like, she says, then I'd kill her. And she sees the anger flash in Deku's eyes. And she says, but I've seen the error of my ways. Please set me down and let's talk about this. And Deku sets her down and he's like, look, I don't like conspiring against my old man. But if you're telling the truth, then he's already against me. She says, yes, just observe him for the time being. Promise me, right, Midoriya? And he says, for one, you're going to stop calling me Midoriya if we're working together. And she says, fine, Cobra. And he says, better. And he says, wait a minute. What if I just come out publicly and say that he's Redestro and get all the, heroes take him out? I'd inherit his fortune and everything. And she says, that's true, but could you beat him in a fight? He wouldn't go quietly. So, quick little intermission here. I want you guys to comment down below. Do you want Deku to reform into a hero? Or do you want him to stick with Redestro and be a Liberation Army member? And, comment that down below. And at the end of today, I'm going to count up all those votes, and that's the path the story will take. And if there's a tie, then I'm just going to decide myself. So, with that out of the way, let's continue on with the story. So Deku tells her, alright, look, I'll see you later. I need to get home now before he sends any more of his goons after me. And, he can hear someone listening in. He jumps up there to the roof, catches them, and he impales them right through them with his arm. And, he pulls it out. And he's just like, good thing I rolled up these sleeves. It'd be hard explaining why I got blood all over me. As he washes off the blood. And Lisa, she goes up there and takes the body to be disposed of and clean up all traces behind Deku. So Deku, he goes home. And Redestro's like, my boy, where have you been? And, Deku says, oh, I was out on a date. Sorry. And he says, oh, you're dating? Who's the lucky lady? And he says, oh, just some girl I met at the music shop. She doesn't completely annoy me. And her voice is very soothing. Redestro hears that, and he's actually very happy for his son. He's like, oh, that's it, my boy. And Deku, he's wanting to confront him, but he doesn't. He's gonna wait. No need to play his hand just yet. So, for the rest of the time there, Deku, he hangs out with Jiro, then with Cabellios, which he does, introduce Jiro to Cabellios, and Cabellios, is very fond of Jiro. And, Deku, he's like, man, I'm hungry. And Jiro's just like, well, you want to go eat? And Deku's like, I really don't want to leave the house. And Cabellios, gets right up there in Deku's face and breathes poison on him. And Jiro's freaking out. And then she sees Deku sucking in the poison. And Deku's just like, much better. That hit the spot. And he's like, thanks, Cabellios, as he rubs his head. Cabellios slithers back around and curls up and goes to sleep. Which Cabellios, it's a huge snake now. And, Jiro's just like, what was that? Deku said, that's my power. Poison. She's like, wait a minute. Your quirk's poison? He's like, yeah. Poisons have no effect on me, and if I eat them, it actually replenishes my strength. And she's like, you can eat poison of any kind, and no poisons will work on you? He says, yeah, basically. And he's like, oh, I'm also pretty much immune to mind control as well. And she's like, what do you mean? And Deku says, well, if someone can't literally just tear into my mind and take it over, I can pretty much hear their intentions, so it's not really going to do much. Honestly, you're probably the only one who actually has a shot at taking me down. And she's like, why is that? He's like, sensitive ears. And she gets it. Her sound quirk could overpower his hearing and drive him insane and just knock him out through pain. She says, I'd never do that to you. And Reed Destro, he knows Jiro's in Deku's room because, he knows everything that goes on in his house. And, Reed Destro calls out to Deku and he says, Cobra, my boy, come down here for a minute. Bring your girlfriend with you. Jiro's face turns red and, Deku's like, well, you heard him, my girlfriend. And Jiro's just like, hey, I'm not your girlfriend. And Deku just winks at her and says, not yet. But you will be. She's like, I don't know where you get your confidence from. And Deku's like, you'll get used to it. So he walks on down. And, Redestro's there. And, he says, oh, there you guys are. How would you guys like to have a meal? And Deku's like, oh, thanks, but I just ate. And, he looks at him and is like, really now? What did you eat? Deku looks at him and says, poison. And Redestro's just like, wait, what? And Deku says, yeah, I can eat poison. It's had no effect on me. Cabello spews it out of his mouth. So I have an infinite food supply, pretty much. And Redestro is caught off guard. And he's just like, oh, well, very well then, I guess. And Jiro looks at the time and she says, oh, I'm sorry, but I really have to get going home. And Deku says, want me to walk you home? And she says, no, I'll be fine. She walks out the door. And, at this point in time, Redestro's, positions his men. And Deku hears his thoughts and it's just like, lock all the doors. So, they lock the doors. They're standing guard. And, Deku, he looks right at Redestro. And he says, Dad, what the hell do you think you're doing? And Redestro says, I should be asking the same thing about you, my boy. What have you been planning behind my back? And Deku says, I'm not the one who decided to hire another dragon slayer. I'm the only one you need. And Redestro says, is this what that's about? If so, I can just get rid of him and you can go right back to being my faithful son. Correct? It's not like you'd ever try to sell me out or anything, right? And Deku looks at him straight in the face and he tells him, as long as you get rid of that dragon slayer, you'll have no trouble out of me, father. And he says, oh, so the stray finally shows his fangs. And Deku looks at him and he says, and I'm not backing down. And Redestro gets in his face and says, it seems like we need to have a serious conversation. And he tells Deku, but before we begin, are you willing to go against me if it means that beloved girl of yours dies in the process? And Deku grabs him by the throat, and he's got his dragon scale arms out, because it's been like a good while that they've been together, like hanging out. So Deku, he has developed feelings for Jiro, and his just still haunted by his past. So anything good in his life, he's gonna fight to keep that, like, bear none. Who he has to take out, who he has to, maneuver or kill to keep it, he'll do it. And he went full on dragon mode. Like, he's got the full dragon scaled arms, and he's got Redestro by the throat. And Redestro starts to transform. And he says, "My boy, how utterly stupid are you?" And that's where I'm going to be leaving it off. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you guys left a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys are new. Click that notification bell to never miss an upload. And, you know, as always, I'm the Crown Clown, and I shall see all of you beautiful people again later on today with part 2 of Sabretooth. But also, quick little deal. Remember, should Cobra go against Redestro or side with him? Comment reform or liberation down below. And I will catch you guys later today. Peace.